Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Farscape, Season 1, Episode 14, Jeremiah Crichton. Crichton spends 3 months on a primitive planet. How did you find this episode?
I liked it a lot.
You did?
I did.
Okay, that's fine.
I take it you don't like it?
It's okay. I don't know. Well, I'll say this episode is regarded as one of the worst.
That's great news because it's not even that bad.
There's definitely a lot of bad things about it, but yeah, it's not painful to watch. It's a bit dull.
It's Back to the Future 3. You're in a place and you don't have any more fuel.
Except in Back to the Future 3, you actually care about any of the characters. Well, I mean, I care about John as a character in the show, but the Chief and Lashala and Rokon and all that, I don't know, who cares?
Yeah, I don't care about any of them, but the premise is simple and the consequences for John are immediately identifiable, so I know why it's a big deal, and I want to know how this is resolved. And I like, in the beginning, he thinks they just ditched him, and he had no way of knowing that's not what happened, and so he's on that planet the whole time, angry.
That stuff seemed quite well done. I like how there was a sense of magnitude to the situation. What did they say about a quarter of a cycle? So
Yeah.
3 months, which seemed about right. And he had his glorious fake beard to show how much time had passed.
And it was interesting when we see the rest of the crew on Moya discussing what to do, because I first thought, well, wouldn't they just say screw John and then keep going? But then they address it and say, and then all these people have different motivations. This is a good episode to follow when John and Aaron were kissing, because now she's more invested in him, and I like that stuff.
They're guilting each other, trying to say the first one who gives up is kind of the one that's going to kill John for them.
I did think immediately, oh, they should abandon John. So it was good they didn't just ignore that.
That would be quite a twist for the show. I think what is kind of weak about this episode is just a lot of the stuff with the people living there. They have absolutely no depth at all.
Yeah.
The Lashala just fancies John for no real apparent reason.
Well, he's exotic.
Well, we know John, but he's just some random dude that hangs around outside the village.
He's from the skies. That's intriguing,
I guess. Rokon is just angry. He's the angry guy that wants to fight John. There's nothing there, really.
I really wanted Rokon to die.
Yep, that would have been... I don't know, I would have almost no emotional response to that. The Chief was just sort of needlessly diplomatic. He just said platitudes the whole time and smiled. Also, half of the tribe guys were perfectly clean-shaven, but John was not. What's with that?
It was a chance to grow a beard, because Erin's not around. She doesn't like beards.
They kissed one time, and he's never had a beard previously to that. But whatever, that's just a minor thing. So there's this energy field that prevents them from using anything with power, and that somehow kept them as one tiny, terrible village.
I like the idea of keeping a group of people primitive so that they can't explore, but then that execution doesn't make sense.
Mechanized farming has a lot of possibilities that don't use power. There's a lot they could do that for some reason they haven't done. I don't know, we didn't see that much of what they were doing, but they seemed needlessly primitive.
Once again, Rigel saves the day.
Does he? Oh, because his hands fit in the little thing.
That, and when he first shows up in the village, John and Dargo were about to be executed.
Well, yeah.
So he saves the day by complete accident, which means he's saved the day reluctantly on purpose and now completely by accident, covering all bases of heroism.
Okay. Are you trying
He
to
hit the
develop
trifecta.
Are you trying to develop a theory where Rigel is the greatest hero on the show?
Rigel actually is God.
That I think you made a bit of a leap there. But if you asked him, he might agree.
He took to it immediately.
Well, as they say, if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
I really liked that scene where he asked for the religious text, and when he was asked, "Oh, how did you know?" he says, "Every religion's got one." When they were doing that scene, I thought they were going to do the typical sitcom-y thing where he says, "Well, I know all about the ceremony, but why don't you explain it to my friend here? He doesn't know."
I know what you mean. Yeah, it seemed like that was coming, and I'm glad they came up with a much smarter angle.
Yeah, I was primed to roll my eyes really obviously.
So hard.
A huge strike against this episode is the abundance of CGI Rigel.
The script writer wasn't aware of the technical issues with using Rigel a lot.
Oh.
So I think this episode might have the most CGI Rigel of the whole show.
At least most of the time it is zoomed out and it's not taking up the full frame, but it still looks bad.
It's kind of inevitable. I think even now, CGI is so good, it still doesn't look quite perfect a lot of the time. All the subtle CGI that they do to touch stuff up usually looks great, but focusing CGI stuff, especially mixing it with live action, still, I wouldn't say it's bad, but I think it's a sort of game of diminishing returns to perfect that. But yeah, in the late 90s, it just looked absolutely terrible.
But they had all of these scenes that they couldn't really get around doing practically. So hearing you say the writer didn't realize it, that makes a lot of sense.
Speaking of Rigel, I don't know if you noticed, but Puppeteer was visible.
I did not notice.
Just after Rigel and Dargo crash land on the beach, Rigel's talking, and you can see a human guy on the right side of the frame. Just you can see, I think he might be wearing glasses or something. You can just see the corner of his face. Actually shows how difficult it must be to shoot with all these models and stuff and puppets.
Hey, they got through a bunch of episodes before it happened, or at least until one of us noticed.
Oh, I didn't notice. I looked it up on the wiki.
Oh, okay.
But then when I went back and watched, it is kind of obvious, and I kind of wondered how I didn't notice. But then again, I guess I was looking at the characters, not at random sides of the screen.
In general, I don't stare at the corners unless they want me to.
Well, after that, I started looking off frame a bunch of times, and I think I spotted a buoy in the lake, or for you, a buoy.
Wait, you don't say buoy?
No, it's a buoy.
How do you spell it?
Buoy.
So buoy.
No, it's buoy.
Nope.
Okay, a buoy was, I think, visible. It's an orange floating thing just over John's shoulder in one of the later scenes.
Oh, is that the scene when something falls from the sky into the water and then John plucks it out, even though it would probably be hot and hurt?
Uh, Maybe. It depends. The technology could be very good.
But does he know? It's a random object.
Well, if it's hot, he'll be burned severely, and he will then realize he should stop attempting to pick it up.
That was weird to me that he would do that without hesitation.
The water wasn't boiling or anything.
Oh, right. That would be a good indicator. I still don't think you should touch anything when you're in a part of the universe where you're encountering aliens and spaceships and stuff.
Dargo said it's from Moya. Or did he say that after John picked it up?
I think he said it after.
Okay, I mean, they were gonna get executed and stuff. He's not got that much to lose. They didn't know that at the time, but he was maybe just sick of the episode and wanted to take a chance.
It was for our sake. He wanted to move on with the episode. In this episode, John says rat's ass, and previously he's said frog's ass, so I think he's obsessed with asses.
Are you saying he's an ass man?
No, he's not a proctologist, he's an astronaut.
Very clever. When did he say rat's ass?
I don't
He
remember,
doesn't
but
give-
it's in my notes.
Oh, he doesn't give a rat's ass or something, probably.
Yeah. Why is this episode called Jeremiah Crichton? The reference is lost on me.
There's an old Robert Redford film from 1972 called Jeremiah Johnson
Okay.
about a dude, a hermit, who is murdering Native Americans.
Oh.
Just reading this from the IMDb description, I mean, it phrases it in a more neutral tone.
Okay. I guess it's appropriate to reference pop culture when John does it all the time. But that seems like a strange choice.
Is this even pop culture?
Unpop culture?
Well, I don't know. It's quite reasonably rated. It's probably an okay film. It's a, I don't know. I don't think they wanted to specifically reference it. Although at the end, he does. They use the lines from the end of this film, apparently, according to the wiki.
Oh, then that's a direct reference, yeah.
But it doesn't need to mean anything to anyone.
It sounds like someone got away with this and not everyone knew what was happening.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's a good premise. He lands and then they hang around. He doesn't actually kill any of them.
He should have.
They get
Should
into a
have killed
tangle.
Rokon.
At the end, he was like, "Okay, Rokon, take care of the Shala." Like suddenly, she would fancy him if he wasn't there.
Yeah, of course. With his blessing, her heart will belong to
Move on.
Rokon.
I think what she would say is, "I still don't fancy this guy." In case you didn't notice, he's a massive jerk.
And he doesn't have a well-trimmed beard.
Oh, is that what it is? She's a beard maniac.
Yeah, maybe they can't grow beards.
Oh, that would make sense. Then they don't have any razors or anything, so John can't shave.
We solved it.
How would you know what a beard is then? He would just look like a guy that had weird hair growth, like if you had one really hairy hand.
She's into that.
Well, then she is kinky.
She didn't know, she wasn't aware of her fetish until John came around. It was a
Her...
dormant fetish.
Okay, you've activated my trap card. Her and Rokon are going to have a very rocky relationship then.
Do you mean they're going to hang out on rocks? That's probably something these boring people do.
I was going to say that sounds likely. 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Stand on some rocks. Did you like the soundtrack to this episode?
I didn't notice it.
It was one audio cue played again and again.
That's about what this episode deserves.
Wait, I thought you said you liked this episode.
I'm realizing I don't. I like the premise more than anything. Where John gets left behind and then he thinks they left him on purpose.
That stuff was all good. I think the problem with this episode is just boring. Once they find John and oh, he'll get back, and they just have to muck about with these primitive people that I don't care about, and they just cause contrived problems for no apparent reason. Then there's some stuff with Rigel which is supposed to make you think something, but it's just, Hynerians were a bit kind of awful.
Oh, I was supposed to think that?
I don't know, it's kind of like, it seems like it's going somewhere. Then they deactivate the thing, and it doesn't change anything. Now you can invent electricity, although, to be honest, you're hundreds of years away from that, so good luck with that.
Yeah, I changed my mind. This episode's not very good. I do like bits of it, though.
Yeah, it's not. I've seen shows which have bad episodes that are far worse than this.
I'm really happy to hear that some people think this is as bad as the show gets. It could have been so much worse.
It's not my personal least favorite. We've got a while to go before we get to that one. To be honest, I think there's other season 1 episodes we've seen which are worse than this one. But that's just my opinion. Obviously. Because I said it.
Hey, John says Hakuna Matata. That's pretty fun.
The tribespeople were saying something very similar.
Masada.
Yeah. Presumably it was written so that he could drop that reference.
I would really bet on that.
What did you think about all the tribespeople being a mix of different races / ethnicities?
Too obvious of an attempt to include diversity.
Okay.
Also, I think they wanted to avoid outcries of racism if they depicted just one race as this primitive race.
So there's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's actually the 3rd episode of the 1st season. It's called Code of Honor. And they go to a planet and it's got a primitive tribes people kind of thing going on. But they are all African American actors.
Oh,
all of them.
Sounds like it made people angry.
I presume it was innocent, but it comes off as very, very racist. It doesn't help that there's another episode that's like right after it where they find another planet that's all Caucasian people, and it's like really idyllic. So these 2 episodes together, I think, made sci-fi shows especially wary of sort of racial stereotyping, even if it's unintended. You can't say these aliens are savages. Also, they are all really Asian looking or something. That's the problem.
That's what it felt like here. We better make all of these people different, otherwise people will get angry.
It sticks out in this episode, and I think that's probably because of that Next Generation episode. Or certainly Star Trek, the original series, did this quite a lot. Quite often an alien race in Star Trek, the original series, is they just paint a bunch of people a color and say that's their race. Which is fine if it's blue or green or whatever. But when it's sort of brown, it sort of seems very racist.
It does.
That was made in the 60s, though. It's understandable that they made those kind of decisions without understanding it. Next Gen was the 90s, so they didn't really get away with it.
I can understand wanting a unified appearance for a race, but then for an alien race, but then you don't want to spend all this money on makeup and prosthetics, so you want to hire people who look similar, but then you run into that problem where people think or might accuse you of being racist when maybe you're just budget constrained.
It's a series of logical steps that come to a fairly bad conclusion. If you really wanted to solve it, you'd make them all lizard people or something and say, well, they're all lizards, you know. But that cost a fortune. So here we just have a weird mix of different races in quite a small tribe, which is unusual, seeing as you would think they would all blend out in such a small population.
There's no evidence of blending. It stuck out so much. I thought there was going to be a subplot about how certain people can't mate with other people.
Or they're all clones or something.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be part of the plot, and that's why Rogue Khan was lusting after whatever her name is, because he's not allowed.
Sorry, I'm supposed to follow up with names.
Because he's not supposed to mate with her or whatever.
Hey, if they did that, it could go all the way back round to racist.
Yeah. Well, unless they come out against segregation.
I guess. I think the problem is, whenever you want to portray a savage / primitive tribe, these guys weren't too savage, but well, they had the death penalty and they like to ambush people and stuff. As soon as you try and do that, if you can't afford to make them all bird people or lizards or something ridiculous, you're basically in a racism minefield. And no matter which way you go, just like a real minefield, it's probably not going to be very good.
Just don't walk in minefields.
Yeah, don't take it in that direction unless you're prepared to completely cover your tracks and make them all half
black, half Asian.
No. I was going to start mixing animals. Make them all griffins or something. Or go Gulliver's Travels and make them all horses.
Give them all hoods. Hoods are cheap. Never see their face.
Yeah, that's really going to be a budding romance between Lashala and John if she's wearing like a burqa and a mask.
One hooded figure stares at another hooded figure silently.
That actually sounds like a more interesting episode. He lands on a primitive planet, but the people are just completely weird.
Yeah, instead of sort of like us.
Just like wear full body suits so you don't know what they look like, and they just sort of roll around on the floor and stuff.
And one of them fancies John for some reason. I've always wanted a suitless man.
Wakes up in the night with this person staring at him. After 3 months, he'd say, Dargo, I'm so glad you're here. Please help me.
He walks into the chief's hut, and then he's talking to him for a good minute or two, but then it turns out he was asleep, but he couldn't tell because of the hood.
It's just a dummy with a hood on.
He's not even in it. There was his hood just sitting on the chair.
Or it's 2 children standing on each other's shoulders.
Little babies in hoods.
Do you have a quote from the show too? Sorry. Do you have a quote from this show which you'd like to share with us?
It is not always your fault, just almost always your fault.
Oh, was that Dargo to John?
Yes. I like that he conceded. It's not always his fault.
I would hardly call that a concession.
For Dargo it is, because before that line I would expect him to say, it is always your fault, Crichton.
That line follows in the pattern of previous episodes which have had some sentence about Crichton and then flipping it around.
Works well.
Ever get tired of doing that?
Never.
It's usually pretty funny, so I hope they keep going with it.
I hope the last line of the show is criticizing Crichton.
You might be right. When it's the last episode, if it is, I'm going to remind you.
It's such a fitting way to end the show, even though I don't know where this show goes. I still think that will be a constant where they complain about John.
It's a safe bet based on what we've seen already. A lot of the dialogue is about John being a moron or just confusing or unpredictable or etc. Shall we move on to the next adventure?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds good.
Don't leave me behind.
I will not do that.
Thank you.